Shalom! This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And I want to wish you an almost happy Shavuos. That's coming up this week. But before we talk about any of that, and before I talk to you about the P word, which we're reading from a book about, and before I tell you later about Mexico and the Maldive Islands and all these things, we're very excited, very delighted to have a guest in the neighborhood, both a singer and a songstress. And I stress that, that she's a singer, because we have NATALIE DOUGLAS joining us on the program. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a 13-time, usually 13 is an unlucky number, it's lucky number for her, because she has 13 MAC awards. These are awards for cabaret performances in New York. And she has performed at Birdland more than 80 times. In fact, she's going to be back there on June 17th for a special show that she's going to talk about. And she has her photo on the Birdland Wall of Fame. Now, this is a legendary jazz club, and also a club we talk about every week because we have so many cabaret people on the program. But joining us as soon as I'm hoping, because I just admitted her, but I don't know, I'm hoping she's coming in, or she might have to redial and come back. But come back, NATALIE. I don't need to, this is good. She's coming back. Here she is. I need you to unmute your microphone there, because...
Hello!
Hello, shalom! NATALIE DOUGLAS, I'm just giving you an intro. How you doing?
I'm well, how are you?
Oh, I'm I'm Jewish, so I have all sorts of... But you're looking good. I love the look. I love the glasses, and I love the hair things.
Thank you.
I'm getting payas extensions, but I'm not... These are the first two, but they just flip and fall. Anyway, let me tell you something about this. Reviewing Ms. Douglas when she was in performance for CabaretScenes.com, a writer there named Bart Greenberg wrote, quote, "She is a diva of the first order, bringing her trademark warmth and good humor, her sweet innocence, and her glorious and flexible voice and style. NATALIE DOUGLAS does it right." So won't you welcome to us the right-doing NATALIE DOUGLAS. Shalom, how are you?
Why, thank you. Shalom back at you. How are you?
As I said, yeah. But the more important thing is, Mazel Tov, you're going to be at Birdland on June 17th, as you call Juneteenth. So tell us about this special eventy thing that you're part of.
Sure. This is my third annual Juneteenth show since it became a national holiday in the United States. We've done a show on the Monday, wherever that falls, right before or right after Juneteenth for 3 years in a row, and it's a very special moment. I'm a very political creature. I'm a very sociological and cultural creature. So I love to do programs that sort of talk about where we are in the world and where we are as artists and where we are as a nation, where we are as human beings. And this show does that. This show celebrates, I mean, Juneteenth has become, long story, but I was adopted. I didn't know I was adopted, but the family I grew up with, my parents are from Texas. And so in Texas, Juneteenth has been a holiday for 100 and almost 60 years. It became more of a national holiday over the last 20, 30 years. But so it was something that our family often did. We'd go, I grew up in Los Angeles, and we'd go visit the Texas relatives that third week in June, and there was always a picnic and a church thing, and it was always this family celebration, which I later came to learn was wider than just my family. It was celebrating a very specific historical moment for Black people in this country. So as it got more national attention, it seemed like a perfect fit for me to take shows and songs that I've often done on the subject of the Black experience in America, and put them together under this umbrella of celebrating this one specific holiday. And the thing I like about it is that the holiday celebrates not just achievement um, through struggle and not just acknowledgement of the trauma, but also excellence. So it celebrates Black excellence, and there's joy in it too. It's not just a litany of the things that went wrong.
Please,
Um,
look at all the Jewish holidays. All we do is complain and starve. It's like 24 hours we can't eat. We have bad breath. We hate each other. And this is a classic Jewish holiday, except for one or two. It's nice that you guys have a holiday. Oh, we're gonna celebrate. I mean, it's bad things, but mostly we're celebrating and we're
celebrating good things,
eating.
yeah.
Like,
Celebrating we're here,
yeah, celebrating that you're here. And what are you going to be? Because it's dedicated to Black female singers, right? That's
yes,
what yeah.
yes. Well, each year I've done a slight variation on the theme, so I'm not doing the same exact show every year. So the first year we did a Juneteenth freedom songs, and then last year I did Juneteenth Jubilee specifically, sort of, and kind of a focus on the '60s and music of the '60s by Black artists. And this year I'm focusing on the women. So I'm bringing in mostly female musicians, and I'm celebrating by singing songs that were either written by or made famous by Black female artists, and also telling some stories about some of the great Black women who have been an inspiration to me. Shirley Chisholm and Danny Lou Hamer and Mary McLeod Bethune, and talking about, I grew up with a mother who was very active in the National Council of Negro Women, and its sister organization, National Council of Jewish Women. And yes, in Los Angeles, those two organizations work together often. And I grew up sort of a part of all of that. And I went to all girls school, so I have a lot of female heroes in my life, and I like to celebrate them, and I like to talk about them, and I like to look to them for inspiration in the times that are kind of rough, because sometimes they're kind of rough. So yeah, so it's a celebration of all of that, and an exploration of it, and singing the songs and telling the stories, which is always fun for me.
So even more detail. Give us an example of two or three of the artists and songs. So Shirley Chisholm, great lady, but not much of a singer, as I recall.
No, she didn't sing so much. Nina Simone is my queen. She's always like at the center of most things I do, because I adore her and I have since I was a kid. And she was a firm believer. She used to say that an artist has a responsibility to reflect the times in which they live. So her work was often attached to and spoke to the things that were happening in the world around her, and in the political world, in the global community. Sort of, she was happy to tackle anything. So she wrote songs on the subject. She also covered songs that she didn't write on the subject. Like, one of the songs that is on the song list is a song that Nina recorded called "I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free." It was written by Dr. Billy Taylor. And I think it's one of those, it's become a jazz standard, but it's one of those songs that is deceptively simple, in the sense that it's not, overly complicated. It's not like super intricate and weirdly atonal or anything like that. But it's really deep. So we're going to put that in, and probably, because it's become something of a trademark when I do these programs, Nina's original composition, Mississippi Goddam, which, I have said over and over again now, is now 61 years old and still sadly relevant. But the good thing about it is that what Nina did is take all that anger and pain and rage and despair that she felt, she wrote it in reference to the bombing in Birmingham, Alabama, that murdered 4 little girls waiting for Sunday school to start. She took those feelings about that attack and turned it, she voiced them, but by virtue of her artistry, she also turned it into this beautiful piece. So it's like somehow she took all of those awful feelings and found beauty and strength in surviving and like the hope for things to get better. And so I think it's still worth singing.
Oh yeah, I mean, I do my own version called Cedarhurst. God damn it, but it's a very different thing. It's just complaining about
Your own twist. Yeah.
So who else besides Nina Simone? Who are
So
Roberta Flack is in there or not or what?
yeah, Roberta. Yeah, because I'm a big Roberta Flack fan too, and she also was an activist. She sang early on in her career songs about the struggle. And so I know one. I know one of the choices that I really want to put in, but I'm at that place where I have too many songs for this. So I think this is in. It's a great song called Tryin' Times that Donny Hathaway actually wrote. And Roberta recorded it. Well, she sang it early in the career, like 72, 74, when she was part of the Soul to Soul tour that went to Africa. It was a tour that I think Quincy Jones put together, but it was
Ike and Tina Turner were on there.
Ike and Tina Turner, yeah, exactly. I just went blank on like some of the names, but yeah, it was like this incredible tour of Black artists plus Carlos Santana, and I don't know, and and she sang it there. Unfortunately, when they reissued the CD version of that concert, because it was on the live album, but in the early 2000s when they released that, she for some reason didn't like her performance, so she didn't allow it to be part of that. So you have to find the vinyl in order to find like her performance of it, but it's fantastic. It's a great song, and it's specifically about what was happening in the early 70s in the United States. So unpopular president, unpopular war, and so, I know, imagine, and concerns, yeah,
say it, yeah,
and concerns about the future and civil rights and rights of women and rights of queer people, and so it's this fascinating tune to put a modern spin on because it is about some things that apparently are eternal. So I first started singing that a couple of years ago, under a different administration, and so but it's a great song. It's really well written, and it's just a fantastic rock song like of that genre. And that's one of the things I find sort of fun about this. Like I can pull tunes that Ella sang because she's one of the great Black artists that certainly influenced me and is beloved by so many of us. And and obviously her style is very different from Nina's or Roberta or Tina Turner, or Tracy Chapman, or any of these great women artists that I can select from and add to the story we're going to tell.
Now, also speaking of promoting certain things, are
Yeah.
any of the songs on your relatively new CD, Back to the Garden from Club 44 Records, are they going to be part of, are any of those there on there, or we?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're gonna. I haven't quite figured out, but I think that I have several options that I want to put in there. Yeah. I have always. I mean, I'm so excited. I love this album with all my heart. It's my fourth recording, but it's my first one with a label, and I had a really, I've had a great time working with them. They're really wonderful over there. And I spent a lot of time in Nashville actually working because that's where the label is based. And so we recorded down there. And but it's their songs that I just love, and they're songs that, you know, I'm such a research geek. I love to find out like the stories behind the things. So one of the tunes on there is one that I found when I was doing my Shirley Bassey show in 2017. that's when I really started doing these sort of tribute shows to specific artists, as opposed to a tribute to like a composer or a genre. Um, so that summer I did a Sammy Davis Jr. tribute, another Nina tribute, Linda Ronstadt tribute, and Shirley Bassey. And when I was doing the Bassey research, I found this song that I'd heard of, but I'd never actually heard. And when I started looking for it, I couldn't find the actual song. I could find, bits of like little bits of information about it, but not a recording of the tune, because apparently she only recorded it for a demo, and it was supposed to go on an album that it never did. So the only recording of it that exists is from a TV special that Dame Shirley did in the 70s, I think. Maybe the late 60s. No, it was in the 70s, because I remember which husband it was. And it's like an Italian beach, and it's kind of a proto video kind of thing, like pre MTV world, but she's walking along a beach and the song is playing. So you hear her singing it, but she's not actually singing it or lip syncing it. And the images that we see have nothing to do with the song, so it's kind of amazing. But the song was written for her by Lionel Bart when he wanted her to play Nancy in Oliver.
Oh, wow.
And the producers at the time weren't sold on the idea, and ultimately decided no, she can't do it. But he really wanted her, so he kept bringing her in and kept writing songs just for her. So it's this glorious kind of moment in time out of that very musical theater moment in the 60s, but it's got all of these things in it that are so Shirley, that are so like Bondian and dramatic and big. And so I was really, really excited that the label got as excited by that song as I am. So we recorded it, and now technically it's this song from the early 60s, and this is the first release of it. So it's that history thing that makes me all happy.
Mazel tov. By the way, we are talking with Natalie Douglas. And hello, shalom. No, you're not going away anyway.
I know. I'm just waiting
to talk about, because let's go back to your mom, even though she was your adopted mom. She's your mom, right?
Yeah, she is.
Who got you singing? So tell us about it. I mean, she was really like yeah.
No, see, here's the thing. The crazy thing was she started it, but then she really, really regretted it. Because when I was really little, I was bugging her. My mother always worked. And so she had picked me up from the nanny and like brought me home and was making dinner. And I was talking a lot, which I'm sure you can hardly imagine. And I'm sure I was asking a million questions. And she said, "Oh, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to teach you a song, and you can go to your room and practice it. And then at dinner, you can sing it for me and Dad. If you like nail it, if you get it right." Which for some reason, like I was so totally into. I was down. So she taught me "You'll Never Know," which is one of my favorite old standards.
Never
and
know
it's actually
just how much. Is that
yes, that's the one. Yes, Alice Faye. And that's actually on the album. It's the first time we recorded that. That's on the new album too. So that was the first song I ever learned. I think I was 4 years old. And I went to my room, and I remember being in my room and practicing it, like singing at the stuffed animals and the cats, and thinking to myself, I'm a singer. That's what I do. I'm a singer. Like, and
you
apparently
were what, 4? You were how
four.
old? Yeah.
4. I mean, little, but like this. Oh, okay. That's who I am. So, I wasn't surprised when this was my path after college and grad school. My mother, however, was horrified and tried to talk me out of it many, many, many times. But I'm a singer. That's who I am. So
you say after college and grad school. I mean, I assume in university you didn't do an entertainment path.
No, I was a undergrad. I was a psychology major with concentrations in theater and women's studies, and as a grad student, I was a psych grad school. My master's is in psych and theater. I did a double in. So I mean, it was evident to anyone who was paying attention because I was always a part of my world. I studied, but I studied theater. I didn't study musical theater. I did a bunch of straight plays through high school and college and grad school. And singing was something I did for fun and like kind of to pay some bills at, I grew up in LA, so coffee houses in Westwood and, that world. I used to sing at Monty's, a steakhouse in Westwood, on Monday and Sunday nights. It was one of those gigs where they couldn't pay me, but they gave me steak dinners and like,
Yeah, I'll
hey,
take it. And did you have a
exactly.
tip jar on the piano? Did you do that thing too?
No, I didn't. Actually, sort of, yes, but it wasn't a piano; it was a guitar. I
Oh,
didn't play,
yeah.
but the guy who accompanied me, it was really his gig that he invited me to become a part of, which is really incredibly generous and kind of him. So that became like my regular thing. But yeah, there was a tip jar on the little table, kind of by the two of us. Him standing and playing guitar, me standing next to him at the microphone,
Did you ever,
taking requests.
sorry to divert you, but did you ever get a license and did you ever practice psychiatry or psychology or any of that?
No, no, I did not. I did a few hours of intake right after grad school, right after I got my master's. Because I graduated high school at 16 and college at 19. So when I graduated with my master's, I was only 21. And for a little while, it was kind of, it, it, up there were a lot of people who looked at me askance when I went to, sort of job interview, world. When I did that world for a little while, that were kind of like, why are you so young? What are you doing here? So I did a little bit of the training that at the time in Los Angeles required a certain number of hours doing intake evaluations. When people came in to this particular facility, it was a clinic, outpatient. They would, we got trained how to find out what they're there for. So it was sort of a questionnaire, but not, we asked questions in a more open-ended way so they could answer. It wasn't like a multiple choice question. And we learned how to do that. That was the idea, so that as as the first clinician that they're going to see, and in this case, as somebody who is, a trainee, how to ask the questions that are necessary for the therapist they're going to see to know what's going on, but how to do that in a way that doesn't cause more problems or or judge the person who's coming in, or like how to do that correctly clinically. Like
Yeah, you don't
that
want
was
to
the
prep the patient for the shrink, and then
yeah,
when the shrink comes in, they're hanging from a belt.
exactly. It's worse. You've made it worse. Yeah, you don't want to do that. So there's a
This happened to
training.
me as a rabbi. It's very.
I'm sure. So, and I found that psychology was really helpful for the acting work. And for life. I'm interested in what makes people tick. I am I think humans are fascinating. Sometimes truly terrible. And sometimes like capable of such magnificence and magic and kindness and joy, and and we're all of those things, and so I find it fascinating how people decide where they're going to act from, on any given moment, like what you're going to be kind, you're going to be, like how people make those choices, um and what goes into making us who we are as adults, and well, and as children too. I mean, children are interesting too, and I think all of that kind of dovetails with the art, because music and theater and I think art is our way of kind of connecting with one another, because sometimes when we talk we don't really hear one another. You know, we.
I missed that.
You're so funny.
Thank you. Well, here's a question for you though. And so you chose not to go into that. So how did you make a living? What did you do from 21 years old with a master's degree and you just coffee shops? I mean, how did you support a life?
I did a little of that. I did coffee shop. I had a million jobs. I waited tables. I did all those things. And then actually for a couple of years, I worked in marketing research for a television network. It was very interesting. Um,
Why?
at the time,
Yeah.
well, at the time, I thought it would be my, I was like I said, 21, and my mother was really insisting that I get a job with benefits, insurance, and such. And I thought one of my professors at UCLA kind of turned me onto this opportunity, and I thought it would be a place I could blend my two passions, what I had studied, theater and in this case, the qualitative part of psychology, the research, the questionnaire, that kind of thing, and statistics, psychological, that. So I thought those two things would exist. I got the job, and then I found out that really it was just the statistics part. It wasn't and analysis, but it wasn't the theatrical part at all. So in that way, it was not fulfilling, and I did not stay there very long. But it was interesting. It was I certainly learned a lot about that side of the business, because I had grown up with a lot of my friends' parents worked in the other side of the business. They were actors, or they were directors, or they were filmmakers. That world. So I'd seen a lot of that. I'd been on a lot of sets and seen that, but I had not seen the sort of the offices, the corporate part.
I got to stop you there because now I want to know, like, you don't have to name names. Like, what sets were you on? What's like the most coolest set in your early 20s you're striding on to see your friend's dad or mom directing or appearing in something?
Okay, let me see. Well, I don't know if I can name names. I'm not sure. Here's the thing. Okay, I will say there was a time when certain networks wanted very badly to enter the world of nighttime soaps, and some networks did that really well, and some others did less so. So I spent a lot of time on those projects that were less successful on those sets. So I spent a lot of time in that world, and it's fascinating world. Um,
But how did you?
when
Here's a question. I have to. How did you stop yourself from telling your friend, "Look, they're doing a thing. Can you ask your dad? Can I be in it? Can I get an under five? Can I do my SAG card or something?"
because honestly, I wasn't acting then. It's like I took 3 years off. I wasn't even taking classes. It wasn't, I sort of stopped. Um, what began to happen, honestly, is that during those years, friends of mine started uh, signing me up for open mic events and like showcasing just the singing part. So I ended up doing that and a lot more of that, and I wasn't acting really. And that began to take over. You know, I, I I did a lot of that. I sang at friends' parties. I sang it, at sort of the behest of my friends who were very kind and come on, we want you to sing. And there was a regular open mic that one of my friends would often sign me up for downtown LA. And after a while, I began to realize that we were in these rooms every 2 weeks, or once a week or whatever, and sometimes I had a lot of friends there, but sometimes it was just like me and my girlfriend Jan, and the crowd was still clamoring and clapping, and I was like, oh, these are strangers, and maybe I could. I don't think they're just being nice. Maybe they like what I do, you know. So I began to actually toy with it, and then I came to visit friends who had moved here right after college, um, and they hooked me up with taking me to some piano bars in New York. And one of those piano bars, the then manager sent a waitress to me after I had sat in and sang a song, and offered me a job. And I laughed and I said, I don't live here. I live in LA. And he said, move here and I'll give you a job. So I did.
Wow.
So
Well, who was it? Was it which?
it was a Brandy's, a piano bar on the Upper East Side. A man I adored who's passed on, named Danny Brack, who was one of my dear friends. And I mean, he later became my friend. But he was, and the waitress was a woman named Julie Shepard, and I adore her. And she came to the table and just said, Danny wants to talk to you. And I was sort of like, who? And she took me to the bar, and he offered me a job. And one of, actually, somebody who later became a dear friend of mine, somebody was sitting at the bar, who I'd never seen before in my life. But when Danny walked away, this gentleman turned to me and said, he means it. If you move here, he means it. So it took me about a year and a half, but I did. I moved here. And I probably within 2-3 weeks, I was working between that piano bar and another one, and then subbing at the others. I was working like 5 to 6 nights a week.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
Let me. How do you feel about cabaret and nightclubs right now versus what some of us might look at as a golden age of '50s through like the
right.
'70s, '80s?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously it's very different. It's much more expensive now for everybody involved. So it is a bigger undertaking, I think. I think there, when I first started, my very first cabaret show that I ever did, I had a $5 cover. So
And
it
was
was,
there a minimum, or was there a no?
yes, there was a two drink minimum. Yes.
Well, all
But
right,
I
still, yeah.
but I think in those days the drinks, like if you wanted a club soda, it was 350, 375. So if you wanted to take a chance on an act you'd never heard of before, if you just wandered into Don't Tell Mama or the Duplex or wherever, and saw a name or a flyer that thought, oh, that sounds interesting, I wonder what that is. It wasn't going to cost you like a week's wages. The same with theater. You could just go see something. And now it is so much more expensive. It is much more daunting. I think people audience members are more reluctant to try someone they've never seen before. Um, and I think that the rooms are, struggle a lot more to make the math work, just because you can't, no matter whether it's 54 below, or a tiny little room downtown, one of the sort of East Village, Lower East Side kind of spaces. You can't, whomever your big seller is, for 54, like Patty LaPompe, like you can't, she's not there 52 weeks a year. So, yes, there are certain people, when you book that person, it's going to sell out. You don't have to worry. You don't have, press is not necessary. It's just going to happen. You have those people, and I think every room has those people. But when you have newer people or people who are less well known, everybody's worried. Everybody's, so how, I mean, the artist is worried, the club is worried. It's always kind of biting your nails. Please let them come. And I think that's because of how expensive it is. I think it's also because there is less of it. I grew up in a world where there was a lot of live performance on television. That was my first. I mean, my parents took me to live performances too. Luckily for me, they adored music of all sorts, and so we would go see the Count Basie Orchestra every year when they came through LA. we lived, our neighborhood had, Tina Turner was a neighbor, Nancy Wilson was a neighbor, the Mills Brothers. There were lots of like really famous musicians who lived next door and around the corner and 2 streets over. So I grew up in this world where live music was a real thing, that it didn't seem like something only, super famous people that I would never ever meet would do. Like it wasn't just, Taylor Swift. Like it wasn't.
All right, but hold on.
So
Did you ever meet Tina Turner like on the street?
yeah.
Like
Oh
she
yeah.
at the
Yeah.
garden?
I knew her son Craig. Yeah. He was older than I, but there was a playground in the neighborhood. I didn't go to school in the neighborhood. Like I said, I went to a private girls' school. But there was a school in our neighborhood that was a street behind ours, and all the kids would play at that playground. So I met Craig and knew him for all the years they lived in that neighborhood. And I didn't know who his mother, well, I knew it was Craig's mother. I didn't know that that was Tina Turner until I, was watching TV one night, and I think probably the Cher show or something, and there she was, and it was just kind of like, oh my God, because she was phenomenal. Yeah, she was amazing. She was incredibly kind. She was an incredibly lovely woman. Like I said, I knew her many, many, many years ago before she moved away. Um,
Who else?
but
Who else did you encounter in a good or bad way living where you lived in LA?
I a lot of people. Well, my godfather growing up, who was also my mother's cousin, was the mayor of Los Angeles, Tom Bradley, for
Oh,
20 years. So we moved in. Politics was kind of family business, and we moved in those circles. So I met a lot of politicians. I met a lot of and I, because of the school that I went to, I met a lot of celebrities. So I knew a lot of actors, and honestly, I had really good experiences because they were my friends' parents. You know what I mean? Like they weren't
yeah.
like it. I didn't work with them. I didn't have some kind of, and nobody was like mean to a little kid, like um although that would be a funny story. But no, Raquel Welch was her daughter was a friend when we were really little, and we went to the school together, and there were a lot of kids like that whose parents were very famous.
How about
And
your adult life, working and singing with people? Like, what's either a mean story or a lovely, happy story about a celebrity that?
um gosh, well, let's see, well, that's actually that's actually, well, I, I'm trying to think. I think, yeah, I think I can say, like, most of the people I consider celebrities and friends are good. Like they're great people. I love them dearly. I did a thing for many years called the A Train Plays, which was a very fun 24-hour from writing to performance process. So, they write a one act and then we learn it, and we do it, like they write it one day, we learn it the next day, and we do it that night, 8 o'clock off book. Little 10-minute musicals. It was really fun. It was really exciting. And became part of that in 2003. And so there were a lot of us who were doing that at the time. And some of the people I worked with then have gone on to illustrious careers. So one of my friends that I just adore is a woman named Ashley Atkinson. She's in The Gilded Age. She does a lot of film and a lot of television, and she does a lot of theater too, and she's brilliant. She's also just so much fun. She's a hoot and a half, and I adore her. She's a really good girl. And Tracy Toms is a friend, and a lot of Broadway people. I mean, a lot of people that because we work together in all of these sort of weird, um, luckily in New York, when people, most of the time, when people are putting together an evening of music, a benefit for something. I do a lot of work for Ali Forney Center. I do work for Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS, Phyllis Newman Women's Health Center. Like when people are putting together those evenings, they often do a mixture of those of us who work in sort of the singing nightclub part, and then the people who do the theater, or film and television part, but who also sing. And so we get to work together in that capacity. And so I've met a lot of people who are notable in that way, and they're great people, and they're talented. I mean, that is one thing I find. I find that people in this business, who are in this business for a long time, who have talent, are also most often really kind, really thoughtful. They're the people who care. They're the people who are down to earth, and who care about what they do, and who care about other people, and who want to share what they do with other people. They are often the people who want to teach, and I've met some of them in that way, because I teach for the Mabel Mercer Foundation and Eugene O'Neill, the
And
theater center.
I'll divert you again. So let me
Yeah.
ask, what is the most important, if you could boil it down to an essence,
Mm-hmm.
what's the most important thing that you teach an amateur or an up and coming singer?
Um, well, one thing I say is that the what you have to be on stage is honest.
Sorry, I
You
missed.
have to be you have to be honest on stage. You can get away with anything else. There different people believe different things. I've worked with people who I've co-taught. Like sometimes we do these sort of seminars where there's more than one teacher. So that's always interesting, because you learn other people's points of view about this thing we do. And I worked with somebody once who was telling a singer that, you couldn't be angry on stage as a singer. That's not attractive. And I was just sort of like, oh my God, I wouldn't have a career. And I was like,
Have you
there
seen
is
Mississippi? Goddamn.
exactly,
Everybody Mississippi, goddamn.
so, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. That's not human. If it's a human emotion, you can have it on stage. Um, but his point of view was that people don't come there for people in an audience don't come for you to be angry at them, and I understand that makes perfect sense. You can't take out your stuff on your audience. That's not what they're there for. But I think that if you are being truthful, you can have any feeling that is human, as long as there's a reason, there's something that you want to share with the audience about this feeling. It's not just look at me have this feeling, because like, what's that? And I've often said that, I don't think the stage is the place for your therapy. It might be therapeutic for people in the house. It might be therapeutic for us in the audience. And in the doing of it, you may find yourself working something out you didn't know you needed to work out. But I don't think you can go into it thinking, well, I'm going to get through this. Tonight, I'm going to get on stage and do this, and that'll make me feel better. Like, you're not here the audience isn't here to make you feel better. That's, they already paid a cover. If they're there to make you feel better, then that's therapy, and you owe them money. Okay. So like, that's something that I tell people. I don't think if there's stuff you want to work out, that is what therapy is for. Then you might find there's something in that you use when you perform. But I don't think you can work it out on stage. I don't think that, because that is an internal thing. And the work that we do, I think, is meant to be coming out. It is about the connection that we make with the audience. It is about what we give and what they give, and what we then simultaneously take from one another and turn around and give back. Like, I think it is a constant sort of stream, a current running back and forth. And if you are only concerned about your stuff, you're cutting off that stream. You're not giving them anything. And even if people are not themselves performers or artists, I think they can feel that. I think that people in an audience can know the difference between someone who's here to be with us, to be present in this room and have a moment, and someone who's here because they want me to be impressed by what a great voice they have. Or I think people can tell what that is, even if they don't know the mechanics of it.
I know I'm giving sermons in my synagogue, they can tell that I cannot cut off my stream, which is why I wear adult underpants. But we're talking with Natalie Douglas here in the neighborhood. I want to remind people, just one or two more questions for you. It's just such a delight talking to you. But we want to remind people, it's been a while since we've mentioned that on Juneteenth, June 17th, so coming up in a little over a week, it's going to be the third annual Juneteenth Jubilee at Birdland, tributes to Black women singers like Nina Simone, like Roberta Flack, like who else? Who else is in
Like, well, in this instance, Ella, that we might do some Lena Horne, we might do some Billy, we might do some Dionne Warwick, we might do Diana Ross. I mean, there's lots of things percolating. There are lots of options on my list. It's really fun.
But it's interesting that it's a week and a half out, and you're still making these decisions. I mean, do you work with a musical director? Do you like piano or
yeah?
So how much do you rehearse, and how much do you kind of have to get set, like the night before or 2 weeks before, or I mean, because they need the charts and they need the arrangements. How does that work?
Well, a lot of it is I work with, in this instance in particular, I'm working with my longtime music director. We've worked together for, I think it's 27 years. We kind of lost count. But so, you know, we have a shorthand with one another. But I have like 3 or 4 guys that I work with that are all really great and also friends, you know, not just colleagues. So we get on a wavelength and we start talking about it as soon as I book it, you know, which can be months in advance. And then I start making decisions. I start making lists. I start winnowing away. And usually I go to the MD with something in the order of like 20 to 40 songs. You know, I know that's too many, but I also know we're going to, you know, sing through a couple things and go, oh no, not that. No, that's not feeling right. And then in the rehearsing of those pieces, we often come up with something else that wasn't on the list in the first place. You know, that it reminds us of something, or we both have the same thought at the same time. And then there's the process of like figuring out how I want to orchestrate it, you know, because for different shows I have different configuration of the band. Like there's a show that I do called Stevie Songs, which is the songs of Stevie Nicks and the songs of Stevie Wonder, and that show is heavy guitar. So I'm my music director on that show is another friend of mine, Brian Nash, and when we put that together, we knew we were going to have at least 2 guitarists when we do that show, and drums and bass, you know. So like certain shows require certain things, and that becomes clear either when I know what the theme is or when I know what the songs are, or the most of the songs. And then I start playing with the shape, you know, putting the order together, because that helps tell the story too. And I've done, as you said, 80 something shows at Birdland. So I've done a lot of that. I kind of know what, you know, if we put that song in space 3, where does that take us then for space 4? Oh, but then if I flip those, then I can go somewhere different at 4 and put that at 5, you know, that kind of stuff. I've sort of, but all of it, I mean, one of the fun things about it is that no matter what we do, no matter how much rehearsal, no matter how much time I spend with the order, it doesn't really live until we're in front of an audience. It doesn't really, you know, there are certain things I will not learn about it until I'm doing it in front of people. And that's really exciting. That's really fun. So I also always leave a little room, you know, because sometimes in the middle of a show, I will turn to Mark Hartman and say, yeah, we're skipping this one. Or I'll say,
unless he has the fake book in front of him.
If it's just us, I can't. If it's a show with just me and piano, which we do sometimes, certain shows, then I can't, because we have a vast repertoire that we've created over the years. And honestly, these days, if I have enough iPads, I can add something even with a band, because I have most of the charts, anything I've ever done, in my iPad. And Mark has most of them. When he's playing for me, he has access to almost everything. But if he doesn't, I can shoot them from my phone or from my iPad to his. So if we have enough iPads, I can call it just depends on whether people are working for paper or iPad. It makes such a huge difference to my life in terms of traveling. I do not have to carry stacks, because I used to have to bring a book. If we're like going to the West Coast and we're doing a bunch of shows. One time I remember we were doing different show in San Diego, Palm Springs, Los Angeles, and Northern California at Los Gatos, which is outside San Francisco. And each one of those dates was a different program. So I had different book for each musician for each show. That's
like
heavy.
100 pounds of paper.
That's a lot of paper.
Yeah.
And to not have to do that anymore is so exciting, because I could just shoot the PDFs before I even leave New York. I send off the PDFs to the musicians, and then as long as their iPad's charged, we're golden.
So they're on stage, not with turn pages anymore. They just go swipey. Wow.
Well, it depends on the musician. It depends on the instrument. A lot of them use a foot pad. They're pedals you can get for your iPad, musicians. It's wireless, and when you step on it, it turns a page. So you don't have to touch it. So you can keep your hands on your instrument, like if you're playing the bass or whatever.
Wow, they should porn like that. No, I don't know
what. but no, because you're not. What do they need a script for porn? Really? Come on. After a certain point. So yeah.
But I wanted to ask this before, but one more thing, because when you mentioned this whole idea of being adopted, because there's a story there that you eventually found your birth parents or birth father. But is it true? I have to. Did your mom actually tell you stories when you were growing up of what it was like to be pregnant with you?
Yes, my adopted mother. Yeah.
Weird.
She was a psychologist. Makes sense, right? Yes, she did. Yes, she really did.
Do you hold that against her, or do you understand?
No. I mean, I was certainly angry about it. But I by the time I found, my mother had passed away before I found out. So I had obviously was never able to talk with her about it. But I had been in therapy for a while at that point myself, and I had already sorted through being able to acknowledge the totality of my parents, the things they did that were great and the things they did that were not. And I knew I was loved. That was absolutely true. That, there was no doubt about that. And that was, and I knew how many benefits I got. Like I was well aware that I had good parents who made some mistakes, but who were good parents. So I had already sort of reconciled myself, since I didn't find out until I was an adult, to being a person who could both love them and still love them, and also not love everything they did, and not need to think they were perfect in order to love them, to recognize their flaws and to recognize the things they did that were wrong, and the things they did that infuriated me, and the things they did that that shortchanged me, that didn't take into account who I was, stuff like that. So when I found out that I was adopted and that they had lied to me about it, initially it was just shocking. It was just like, because it's such a fundamental thing to know about oneself. And to have grown up hearing all these stories about her pregnancy, about, the hospital I was born in, and just all of these things that I knew weren't true once I found out I was adopted. It was shattering, and one of my friends said, it changes everything, it changes nothing. And that is exactly true, because my childhood is still my childhood and my parents are still my parents, but it changes everything. And certainly when I later found my birth father, and I actually found my birth mother too, but I have never met her, but I do know who she is now. um, uh, it and I saw people who look like me, and I am so like my father. I have so many qualities that we're sort of like twins almost. um that it really made a huge difference in terms of who I am. um but it didn't change my history, if that makes sense.
Oh, please.
um
My parents used to say they wish they put me up for adoption. So it's very different.
totally different. But yeah, it's I mean, it was a shock. It was interesting. There are lots of twists and turns to it. I actually put it in a show at one point because it's very theatrical. There's lots of drama, because there, like as I said, my godfather, who was also my mother's cousin, was the mayor of Los Angeles for 20 years. But before he was a mayor, he was city councilman. And before he was a city councilman, he was a lawyer. And when I found out I was adopted, I actually was able to get a hold of my adoption papers because I found out after the fact he was the lawyer on the case. He he was the lawyer on my adoption. And because he had saved everything after he passed away, his widow, my aunt, had saved all the papers, and not knowing sort of like what was, what she was going to do with any of that. And it's some around the time that I found out I was adopted, the law library at UCLA was collecting some of his groundbreaking policy making. They wanted some of the papers, like Los Angeles under Tom Bradley was the first city to pass an anti-discrimination LGBTQIA ordinance, that to make it against the law to discriminate against queer people. That was something my godfather did, and so that kind of thing they wanted to put in this wing or something dedicated to him. So she went through all those papers and pulled out everything that was, historical, and then the things that were family and personal. So when I called one of my cousins and I was, sorting out this, wait a minute, I'm adopted. Did you guys know this? She said, "Oh, yes, yes. Do you want to see your adoption papers?" And like, wait, why do you have them? Because she had helped my aunt do this, So yeah, it there are a lot of magical sort of twists to it, and my birth father, turns out to be a community activist, and a political creature, and one of the founding members of the Black Student Union at San Francisco State back in the sit-in days. And so, you know,
And
it.
you have chosen not to know your mom, your birth mom.
No, it's not my choice. It's hers.
Sure.
Yeah, she's, she's not comfortable. So that's nothing I can do about that.
Well, screw you, real mama. She's a wonder. Look what you're missing. Look at this fantastic person that you are choosing. Fair on you. Fair and shame. Not for giving her in the first place because people make that decision, but no, for not knowing her now.
Well, I'm sure it has to do with the fact that uh, she has subsequent children, and I'm sure they don't know I exist, and I'm sure that that's what it's about. And I feel badly for her, and for myself, because I was raised an only child, so I always wanted siblings. But you know, um, my my biological dad had a daughter that sadly died 9 months before I found him. So I didn't get to meet my sister on that side, but he also has a son that's not his biological son, but that he has raised. So I have a brother, which is fun, and I never had a brother before. Although I do, my two best friends are family. They're my baby brothers. So.
Well, you are now part of the Dave's Gone By Daverhood family. And what a
Yay!
joy, what a delight. And we absolutely have to have you back because you're one of the best
Anytime.
conversationalists ever. But she is Natalie Douglas. And let's tell people one more time that please, on June 7th, I don't know what day is that, Monday? June 7th?
It's a Monday. Yes, it's the Monday. Juneteenth is actually the Wednesday, but this year the holiday falls on the official national holiday falls on the Monday. So Monday at 7 p.m. at Birdland, we are doing the Juneteenth show, Juneteenth Jubilee, the women.
Birdlandjazz.com is the place you want to go for tickets. Birdlandjazz.com. Plus, you're also going to want to go to Club 44 Records or Natalie's website to get Back to the Garden.
Also anywhere that you like, any way that you consume music, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, like it's on all of those places too. Back to the Garden is the name of it. But if you search my name, Natalie Douglas, that and my 3 other albums will show up. So
what are their names?
Their names are Not That Different. That's the first one. The second one was a live recording of my Nina Simone show at Birdland. It's called To Nina, live at Birdland. And the third is called Human Heart, another studio recording we did a few years ago. And the new one, I'm very happy.
As well you should be. And we are so happy to have with us Natalie Douglas. I only wish you much more joy in your life, much more therapy if you need it, but it doesn't.
Why not? Hey, anytime, I think everyone should be in therapy. Believe me, I think there's so many problems that we have in the world that I often say to my darling husband, if only that person had had therapy, we wouldn't be in that place.
Actually, yeah. By the way, Mazel Tov, how long have you been married?
I'm gonna get this wrong. Wait, no, 24 years.
Mazel. What does he do?
He's a personal fitness concierge. That's what he does. He creates
concierge.
Yes, he creates fitness programs for people that are sort of all encompassing. It's not just personal trainer. He does nutritional things with them. A lot of his clients are people who travel for work or who my phone's ringing.
Yeah, I kept you so long. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. So he designs programs for them that they can do in their hotel room. He designs programs that they can do, at certain, like the gym at the hotel they're going to be in Tokyo or wherever. So he has this very kind of hands-on, and in some cases completely online relationship with some of the clients, like because some of the clients go to work on projects and they're out of town for 3 weeks, so he works with them. He does this whole workout thing that you could do over Zoom, which is so that's why he had to kind of come up with a new name for it rather than personal trainer.
Shut up, he's not a man, he's a concierge. And he's a very lucky man. Ladies and gentlemen, Natalie Douglas, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
I'm Sol. Dave is in the other room, but I'm Sol. Shalom to you.
That's so funny. I love it. So I had no idea. I just assumed you sent him to the neighborhood. Hello. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I'm Sol. You can tell I'm Jewish. I don't know if
that I knew. Yeah.
Mwah to you. And best of luck on Juneteenth and every other day of the year. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You too. Take care of yourself. Bye. Thanks for having me.